Tonight, we're continuing our ongoing election series, bringing you conversations with the candidates of some of this area's biggest races. Now, this is a chance for each candidate to lay out what their policies are and why they want your vote. Please note these interviews have been edited down for time, but we do have the full versions up on our YouTube. Tonight, we check in on the state Senate race in Illinois' 36th district. This stretches from the Quad Cities down to Galesburg and beyond to Macomb. Democrat Mike Halpin is facing off against Republican Mike Thoms. We'll hear from both men tonight and begin with Halpin, whose last name comes first alphabetically. It's part of Your Voice, Your Vote coverage here on News 8 at 6:30. Let's just say that you get elected on November 8th. What are your top 3 priorities walking into the Senate chambers in Springfield?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It's one every candidate should be thinking about. My top priorities are to continue to try to bring jobs back to this area. Second is to continue to lessen the pain of the high inflation that we've seen over the past year and a half or so. And then third, make sure that we're continuing to pass responsible budgets that actually help people, but again, still provide for inflation relief. I think those 3 things combined should be the singular focus for the legislature going forward until we kind of ride through this difficult period.
Over the last year, we have seen a rather large spike in either strikes or contract negotiations with some of the biggest businesses here in the Quad City area. We also have a workers' rights amendment on the ballot this fall. What are your positions when it comes to things like wages and workers' rights?
Yeah, so on every issue that you can think of, I stand with workers. I want to make sure that Illinois is a friendly state for workers. I want workers to know that we're out there making sure that we're protecting them on the job, and we have a rigorous worker safety regime to make sure that they're not going to get hurt and not be able to take care of their families. I want to make sure that we're cracking down on companies that are stealing from the wage theft from their employees, making them clock out and then continue working, things like that. Illinois is a very strong state for that. And I want to make sure that Illinois has the strongest possible laws when it comes to maintaining the rights to collectively bargain for wages, benefits, and working conditions.
As a state representative, you voted to help pass the SAFETY Act, which in part helps put more of the burden on the prosecution to explain why a defendant needs to be held. Explain why you voted for this and why you support it.
Well, first, I disagree that it puts a greater burden on the prosecutor. What the SAFETY Act does is make sure that every person taken into custody is seen by a judge, and that judge is going to determine whether or not that individual is too dangerous to be out prior to trial. Right now, we've got a system that alleged criminals can come in and buy their way out, regardless of the offense that they've committed. We don't want to have domestic abusers be able to be arrested, buy their freedom, and go back and immediately intimidate the person that that they're accused of harming. We don't want drug traffickers or gang members to be able to raise money from their organizations so that they can be out on bail and then flee the jurisdiction. We need to get back to what is a threat-based system. It keeps dangerous people behind bars pending trial, but it also allows folks that may have made a mistake but can't afford the relatively modest bond to make sure that they're not losing their job, they're not failing out of school, which can make it harder for them to be productive members of society. I think this strikes the right balance. There are some clarifications I think we need to make. One of the biggest things of misinformation out there is that I've heard people are saying that if someone's camped out on your yard, the police aren't able to do anything, and that's just false. Police have the discretion to take anyone into custody if they're on your property and to arrest them if they refuse to leave. This bill provides for mental health and support services for our law enforcement. It provides for extra training for law enforcement officers. It provides for the use of body cameras across the state, which both advocates and law enforcement agree helps build trust in the community. And it also provides a certification and decertification process that the Attorney General agreed with law enforcement. And my opponent wants to go back and undo all of these good things in the bill while misleading voters about what's actually in there.
Welcome back. Before the break, we heard from Mike Halpin, the Democratic candidate for Illinois' State Senate 36th District. Now, our conversation with the Republican candidate, Mike Thoms. It's part of Your Voice, Your Vote coverage here on News 8 at 6:30.
Good.
Let's say you win on November 8th. when you walk into the Senate chambers, what are the three most important issues to you?
You know, which we may talk about later, but the crime, it's been increasing here lately, not just in the Quad Cities and not just in my district, but across the U.S. And we need to work on, I'll call it reforming. And the state of Illinois tried to do some reforming, but I think went too far with the Safety Act. The corruption, we've seen a number of people, and I guess naming names, Mike Madigan is one in leadership for 40 years. 22 federal indictments against him. There was 2 other senators that just were indicted. We need to work on corruption within the legislation, within the elected officials, and make sure that people are getting fair representation and it's not slighted one way or the other or special interests. And then economic development. We need to continue to build our way, or not to continue, but start building our way out of this financial situation the state's in versus buying our way. Too many people are leaving the state of Illinois. We just see that Tyson's left and Caterpillar's left and Boeing left. The thousands of employees are leaving and people are leaving the state. 100,000 people left last year. And we can't keep on spending more money and having to increase fees and taxes to the people that left here.
Well, let's turn to crime. Illinois has passed the Safety Act, which it is a criminal justice reform law. You've been outspoken against it. Explain your reasoning why.
Well, this safety bill, once again, talks, you know, there's no cash bail. Historically, most crimes are committed with people that are doing second and third offenses. We need to make sure they stay behind jail, stay in jail, stay behind the bars. So to protect the victims, how would you like to be a victim of kidnapping, second-degree murder, and be part of that family, and other crimes, and have that individual back on the street within 24, 48 hours.
And just to be clear for viewers, the Safety Act does not get rid of all cash bail for every single criminal.
It does not. The judge has some flexibility, but less than he had before, or she had before. And so there can be some cash bails, depending on the type of crime, depending on the background of the individual. There is some potential there that still could be a cash bail, or no bail at all, depending on the issue. But unfortunately, a lot of them, that could be the case because they're, once again, looking at keeping the jails empty, and they're worried about those expenses there.
I want to move on to workers' rights, which is one of the biggest issues on the ballot in Illinois this year. You have the Workers' Right Amendment, and labor groups support it, business groups oppose it. Where do you fall on this issue?
You know, I am pro-union. I have no problem with unions and organization and businesses and everything else. But I think that it should be between the employer and the employees on that situation. It should not be automatic that it has to be an opportunity to organize. Also, being in the Constitution makes it permanent for the most part. You don't see too many things coming out of the Constitution. Things change and we can't predict that. And so I don't think that it should be in there as a permanent issue. I'm okay with organizing. If 50% or better of the employees sign an agreement and they want to try to organize, more power to them. I think that they have that right, and the company has a right to be able to either accept that or put their arguments up and whether it should be organized or not. So I'm very supportive of the unions and organized labor, and because I think they serve a great purpose in a lot of areas, but just not in the Constitution.
Again, both candidates' answers were edited down for time. To view a more in-depth version of these interviews, you can tune in to News 8 this week on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. And to watch both interviews in their entirety, you can head over to our website or to our WQAD YouTube channel.